And away they go. And what a great shot. Fourth from the right is Boulanger and Candy.
What a start.
They're the jam car in this race. Unpredictable at best. McGregor going well, Georgie Jacob going well, and the Vold brothers going well. And on the far side, Charlie Smith and Magnus Gregory, awesome from the juniors there. They've got a free ride to the front and they're making the best of it. They're with the French and they're going to stay there. So great stuff from Charlie Smith there in the yellow boat to the right of your shot. But here's the lead group, and it's Georgie Jacob leading that left-hand side. French leading the right-hand group. Great Britain to the right of the French. And I'm struggling to find everyone else in the pack at the moment. Through come the Danes.
Of course, there were 20 boats in this group, so they were strung out across that whole start pontoon, and that's why they all took off straight for the bridge pillars. Now that they've passed under the bridge, they're starting to regroup. Well, not entirely. There's two groups forming, one going left, one going center.
You've got Laurens in the Spanish boat, also out to this side, in the black boat to the right, to the left of the French. But what a ride to the front it is for the Great Britain crew. It could not have fallen better for them. Somebody stopped on the right-hand side. Could be Belgian. I think that could well be Coppens and Coquet from Belgium.
Oh, my word.
That must be a technical failure. Can't be tired already, guys.
300 meters and they're out.
So Georgie Jacob, as he did in the under-23 K1, leading the group on this side with the Vold brothers to their left. There's the Belgium. Sad sight for them. A couple of 100 meters up from the bridge there.
Yeah, that's Rien Coppens and
everyone's
Robin
had to go to the French, and it could not have fallen better for Great Britain here.
Everybody's gone
around. Come the Vold brothers trying to take on Georgie Jacob. Georgie Jacob yep. The Vold brothers are going to be able to squeeze out. They don't want to come past the French. They just want to get on the side of them. Hungarians squeezed into the V. It's the Spaniards, Laurens and his partner, being squeezed out of the V. And Great Britain, oh my word. If you're a junior and under 18 and you're sat there in this race, it does not get better than that. Whatever happens from here on, they've done well. Jacob Adam, top of your picture, just struggling on the outside of the group.
And the black boat going hot on the outside, going to the front.
Is Miguel Laurens. We saw him in the under-23s as well. And for the first time, Great Britain are going to be off the sidewash, but placed beautifully into the V. There's no complaints coming from them until, of course, the Hungarians in the white boat go round the Spanish, which is going to happen. And when we see it, it's going to start getting tougher for the yellow boat of Great Britain.
Well, there's going to be a huge bunch coming up
the
to the
Hungarians,
top turn.
back go the Spaniards, one place back go Great Britain. And they're starting to be put in positions that are slightly less comfortable now. Boros and Salty level with the yellow boat of Great Britain. Jacob Adam out to the left of that group. Bazagny on the right there, on his own in the white boat. The Germans to the far right of your screen. Portuguese, bottom of your picture there. No, Spaniards, sorry, second Spaniards. You got the Swedish crew, two Argentinians and Australians. Josh Kippen, we saw him yesterday, outperforming his ability. But it's going to be a huge group around the top turn. And this is where the experience will tell.
McGregor and Marco in the front, well, not in the front of the bunch, in the middle of the two leading boats there. They could end up with a pull, but they're right up there in the front.
So McGregor making a much better job of this than he did of the first leg in the K1 yesterday, and that's ominous for anyone else in the race. It's the Vold brothers leading now, McGregor to their right, and Burkitt to his left. Boros and Salty to left of your picture, high stroke rate. They're coming round, they're going to be, God knows what's going to happen to them when that other white boat gets to them, but Boros and Salty want to get to the front, and they want to get to, oh, that was McGregor going out, and so McGregor was holding them off. Quite extreme, the direction he took to do that. He was making sure that he was going to give Boros and Salty a tough time there.
Gee,
so,
no place for the faint-hearted there.
Absolutely, it's not. You got the Vold brothers leading. You got South Africa either side. You got the French in the back. That is going to be Boulanger and Candy, I think.
Into the top turn, can they come? It's the Vold brothers leading.
This will be a great aerial shot.
McGregor, Mocker,
The problem boat here is the one in the V-wash because they haven't got enough ground. They've come out. It's the French. We knew there would be a problem in group formations. They just don't seem to have that tactical awareness. And away goes McGregor. The Vold brothers to the left. And the Vold brothers stay out of trouble in the early laps. They're going to be a big contender later on, I think. But we highlighted the French as one of the erratic crews in terms of steering. And you saw it right there.
And it only takes one boat to be sketchy and a big bunch going around a turn like this, and there will be casualties, innocent civilians that are taken out on the outside of the turn. Gee, it's like WWF out there. Awesome to watch.
It always is in the early stages of the K2. And the K2s, of course, have so much momentum that if you need to slow down to duck around the back of someone, it's a much harder job. You've got to communicate that to your partner. It's very, very difficult. Great Britain still there, just at the back of that group in the yellow boat. There's a wash behind the other yellow boat if they can get up to it. They've got a mountain to climb there now, but they're going to do it, and they're securely in the group. So we've got South Africa, from Norway, from Spain.
That's a 10-boat bunch heading down to the bridge. So the hold shot from the Volt brothers, Edvind and John Amund. The Norwegians look like they're going to be a factor throughout. The pace just consolidating a little bit. It's Hank McGregor and Jasper Mokker who are now sitting at the front. Back in charge, throttling
and off
back.
it goes again. There's people feeling vulnerable. Spaniards come up on the right of the Portuguese. Portuguese have decided they're safer leading. Great Britain get pinballed back by Boros and Solti. And in turn get knocked back by McGregor and Mokker. Coming around the outside now, Great Britain. It's a brave move. Naive maybe, but it could well stick. No, I don't think it's going to, because these guys are too sharp for that. That was a rookie error, but bravely tried. The Portuguese push again. So Portugal, Faria and Rodriguez. Faria, of course, at the front of the race in the K1 yesterday at this stage as well. And then either with boat trouble or another technical problem, pulled out of the race yesterday. So he's reasonably fresh. The Vold brothers, Spaniards, Laurence in the back there. We've already seen him. McGregor, Mokker looking good. 6:17. Paufler brothers also in there. On the far side, the Czechs, Jacob Adam, and the second Hungarian crew, Georgi Jakob and Kulify. So a huge group, and it will stay this big. It might even grow. There's problems in the background for somebody. Whoever's got the white hat on in the background, their steering is not good. And they just destroyed the chances of that whole group coming back together.
I must say they're hugging that left-hand bank, which, as Anstott will tell you from our previous discussions, that's shallow water. And the heavier crews will definitely be at a disadvantage, either in terms of drag or possibly even making contact with the muddy bottom there. You can see how shallow it is. So that's a move which is designed to disadvantage the boats on the inside.
And of course, nothing wrong with that, as long as you don't do it too brutally. It's a big group. It's going to be joined gradually by one or two other crews. The Spaniards, that's the big Spaniards, just joining the back of that group. That's Buzan and Fernandez right at the back of the group. They don't seem to be too comfortable at the moment, but again it kicks off, and it's the Portuguese doing it again. The yellow boat of Great Britain really taking the strain now, and at the back it's Georgi Jakob all over the place. Spaniards looking to be taking it easy back there, having a chat even, but I'm not sure what's happened. Charlie Smith, awesome, ducked in. Life-saving move there from Charlie Smith. And he is doing a great job with Magnus Gregory. So 2 Spanish crews in this group, 2 Hungarian crews, Norwegians, French. No, the third boat back from the leaders. So you got in the white boat for Germany.
604 is white.
604 in the white boat is Georgi Jacob. He's coming through. The Spaniards, look at the Spaniards behind Georgi Jacob, just using those other crews. They're doing nothing, and at the same time getting a lift back to the group, back to being in contention. But that group is going to kick off again because nobody wants to be squeezed out. It's the 2 white caps in the black and white boat that I haven't quite been able to identify yet, so apologies for that. They've just had the door shut on them by Laurence in the Spanish boat, the black boat there, but it's the Portuguese. So the bottom turn is going to splinter this group again. The Spaniards actually, when they're on the wash, they're okay. They look like they're struggling in between times.
Is Boros coming up on the shallow inside?
And Salty, they're coming round.
Big
checks,
move
but
from
this
the
move's
Hungarians.
going all the way. All the people can do now is close them out onto the riverbank. And it's Vold and Vold, full on. Boros wants to come round Burkitt there, and he's not going to make it. Jacob Adam in trouble at the back of the group. And Boros may make this stick. It's going to be really tight for Burkitt. They're nearly level. If Boros is coming in too close to them, I was right on the turn as well.
Burkitt's holding him out.
Burkitt did well. He only needed to get to that turn. A foot. That's amazing. And it's the yellow boat of Portugal that's having trouble now.
Oh, and it's making contact with the black boat
There's
behind
all
them.
sorts of problems out there for people. They came into that turn so fast. There was no hope that that group could survive as a complete group. Off the back now, Great Britain, Sweden, the big Spanish crew. So everyone there has still got a lift back to the front with the big Spanish crew. So 86 on his back. Is the Germans in the black and white tops. That's the Paufler brothers. So apologies to all the German fans out there. It took me nearly a lap to identify them, but we're with you now. So Germany just at the back of that group. They were the last survivor from the collisions we had there. To the left of the group, Salty and Boros.
Quick answer to a question online. We're doing 29.8 kilometers, 8 laps and 7 portages. Donat?
The Vold brothers looking very good. They're being challenged for their position on the wash though. It's Salty and Boros trying to make their way up the group. Boros, for me, he comes in too soon. He doesn't get far enough up on the boats before he comes in. And that causes, oh my word,
there's a bumper
all sorts of problems. That's Burkitt in trouble as the yellow Portuguese crew. Oh, McGregor's trying to muscle out the Portuguese. It's not good for him this time. Portuguese aren't having any of it, but he's made it. He made it stick, but it was ugly.
McGregor's actually stopped and put his pedals down. Just composing on myself, I think.
It was a successful move in the end for McGregor, but it was an ugly move. Portuguese survived it. So you got Spain, Norway, France in the 2 white caps in the all white boat, Germany in the 2 white caps with the black and white boat, Portugal in yellow. In the back white boat is McGregor and Mocker, and just to their left is the other South African boat of Van der Westhuizen and Burkitt, and that's your front group. It's going to be tough for anyone behind to close that, but it's Jacob Adam who's doing the work to try.
That Czech Republic boat of Adam and Zavrel actually came out of that mess at the bottom turn quite well.
And it was a mess, and that mess was caused by the speed they went into the turn at. Not everyone could get round cleanly, and we're left with a front group of 8 now.
And it takes a microsecond of contact between a nose and a tail, and then half of that group is guaranteed to slew out sideways.
But somewhere back here, there they are, is the Spanish crew of Buzan and Fernandez. And you know they will make a charge through the field at some stage. So there's very little stress for this second group, because there's 2 crews in there, maybe even 3 with the Hungarians, who you know will be making at least an effort to get back there. The Spaniards will be back at some stage.
So up on the second lap, first full lap is completed. 7 portages in today's title decider to make up the 30 kilometers that's always raced for the men's K2.
Bonacina and Bazagni going out to the right with the Swedes to try and find some clean water and some big rolling waves to come back to this group, but it's a long way back from where they are.
And the group is reforming as Jakob Adam and Jakob Zavrel slot themselves into the back. Very chilled looking Hank McGregor and Jasper Mokke. Apparently there's some blood on the face of Hank McGregor. He might have copped a paddle blade at some stage.
That would have been the collision with the Portuguese. He's got no right to complain over that. It was his doing. He made the move stick, but it wasn't nearly as clean as the identical move we saw him do in the K1s yesterday.
And that explains what Hank was doing when the paddles went down. I think he was wiping the blood off his forehead and out of his eyes. Takes me back to a Berg River Canoe Marathon where he was locked in mortal combat with Adrian Boros, and there was a coming together of paddles, and Hank ended up winning that third
Here we
stage.
go again. It's the French this time, taking up the pace. Group will change. McGregor all comfortably across, but it was chaos behind him with the second Hungarian crew. Whoa, McGregor was lucky there. Unbelievably lucky, but for a foot, McGregor and Mokke could have been in all sorts of trouble. It was Burkett who came around the back of them, and they only just made it. McGregor going around the left of the Norwegians now. I'm interested because he's going to take on Boros for that, who's not having any of it. McGregor collides with the Volds, and they're not having any of it either. So McGregor, at least for now, having to settle for what he's given. You see so many clashes between McGregor and Boros. 90% of those collisions are won by McGregor, I have to say, but that one wasn't. So we've got France, Germany, Norway, South Africa, Spain, Hungary and South Africa. And just joining the group now are the big Spaniards, Buzan and Fernandez. And they have got back to that group in possibly the most efficient way possible.
It's been amazing watching them. They've just been so calm. They haven't had to do any of the work themselves. At stages, that gap's grown quite big, which is quite a gamble. But it just shows how relaxed they are at this stage. I think they're accustomed to coming from behind. They've often had a bad start in the cellar in Spain, and we see them work their way through the field up to the front, take the lead. So
I really hope that we didn't just see him take his drink system off and throw it in the river then, because that would be a penalty of 30 seconds, I think. I don't know if I should say on air who it was, because I don't want to influence the result. But I think I saw a drink system go in the water, and I'll keep you in suspense and we'll see, and I'll tell you after the next portage if I was right or not.
Massive burn at the front again from the front group.
Or not. It's kicking off again. Germans are going past the French now. Out to the right comes Burkett. The Volds hold their position on the left. They should have ducked in the back, but that leaves the back open for the Spaniards, Laurens and Perez. We saw Pouflet yesterday doing this in the early stages, then he faded badly. The French have been cut into the V by the Volds. Elvin Vold in the front of that boat was so efficient around the 5K in Rashita just a couple of weeks ago. Not so the Andy Burkett there. He's struggling to get round, but he's made it well in the end. And out to the side of that is Boros and Solti going wide. They've got a bit of work to do. And the Germans continue to lead. Solti, Boros, hard work up the outside. Spaniards are back off the pace again.
So there's the splits on the big turn group as they went up.
Bit of confusion here now as to who wants to do what. The Spaniards don't want to lead. It looks like it's Burkett. Germans fall back onto the French. You have to be very careful falling back onto a crew like that because their predictability is poor. They're coming around the outside now, the French, to take on McGregor, maybe not to take him on, maybe just to sit on the side there for now. Germans slot in the back of the group again. Boros and Salty still not comfortable on the back of that group though.
Gee, full throttle racing at the front.
A gap beginning to open now between the lead 7 and the chase pack, but the chase pack still contains favoured Spaniards. Boros and Salty really making hard work of this. And where do they think they're going when they get there? Because I'm not sure that the crew that they're going to try and boss out of it, the Norwegians, will have it. They're full on nearly, it looks like, on the outside of that group.
Andy Burkett and John van Westhuizen. Just put that into context. He's still a schoolboy. Stepping up to bark with the big dogs today.
So looking good here. The 2 South African crews, the Norwegian crew, the Spanish crew. Hungarians look to be taking a little bit of strain. The Germans fighting above their weight, and the French unpredictable. So vulnerable in that respect, but everyone's vulnerable while they're in the race. Spaniards in the background, grey boat, red and yellow shoulders on their tops. Boros turning around to Salty just before they start their burn.
There they go.
And Voldenvold, they're just not having it, Voldenvold. They're too fast for Salty and Boros. And unless the Norwegians lead, it's been fruitless for Boros and Salty. Luckily for them, the Norwegians are forced to lead. But clever from the Norwegians, they're dropping back, which makes the Boros and Salty effort. They're trying to squeeze the Norwegians to the front again. This is desperate times, really. Boros and Salty can't afford to come out of this with nothing. Norwegians do not want to do the lead-in.
And they've lost that scrap, and they've had to work hard because they were going through the shallowest part of the course, grinding through the water there.
They gained in the end because they end up on the side, but Norwegians did well there.
But while you're watching all that chaos going on the left of the screen and all the testosterone and adrenaline, you just look across to the right of the bunch and you just see Hank McGregor and Jasper Marker just calmly paddling along on the wash of Burkett and Van der Westhuizen. And now they've probably got a bit more in the tank after watching those other two run it up the left.
And this is really hurting Boros and Salty. There's confusion as to who wants to lead. The Norwegians do not want to lead. That's a fact. Now they're seeing McGregor and they're going to get to him. Burkett's going to be squeezed into the back. And Salty and Boros still second wash out. They've got nothing for all that effort. They've had zero reward. Yeah, they've been doing it for bloody ages. So if you're watching this and you're a youngster, those Norwegians have said no to Boros and Salty for the last minute and a half maybe. And if someone says no to you that emphatically, you just change your position in the group. There's still some good waves in that group. Bit of confusion behind in the second group. Round go the Spaniards on the French. French not secure enough to be cut back into the V. Burkett moves into the V. And around come the Norwegians on McGregor. I think he'll be happy for that to happen. And second wash out, still Boros and Salty. Germans move tidily into the second V there. And everyone getting what they want except the Hungarians at the moment.
So plenty of muscle flexing and jostling going on in that front bunch as they head under the river down to the bottom turn can.
So France from Spain, from Norway, from South Africa, Hungary, and at the back of the group, Germany. Important turn coming up before the first portage. There may be some motivation in the group to rearrange. Boros finally drops back a little and maybe moves in behind the Norwegians. No, he's still trying to force his way up the inside. And after yesterday when he squeezed the group up the inside himself, you'd think he'd be on a steeper learning curve than this.
Candy and Boulanger at the front as they hug the left bank on that turn down to the bottom turn can. Perez and Laurence just on their right.
There's the drone shot.
And outside of them, it's Burkett and Van Westhuizen. On their inside, McGregor and Mocker.
So front group about 20 seconds ahead of the chase group of 4 there. Behind them, it's about another 20 seconds back to the 3 and a further 20 seconds back to this group of 4. But here's the front of the race. It's Boulanger and Candy from France. They've been getting stronger and stronger in these races. A couple of years ago at the Europeans, they were strong for the first half, faded badly. Since then, they've got better and better, at least at the endurance side, if not the tactical side. Georgi Jacob getting out there. They're in the retirement pontoon.
End of the road.
That's Georgi Jacob and Kulifai from Hungary. They're done. Their day is over. 2 retirements so far.
Throw the cat amongst the pigeons. Great question coming in from Jesus. Is this not an Olympic sport? If not, why not? Wouldn't we love to see this at the Olympic Games?
You're asking the wrong people. It's clearly a spectacle worthy of an Olympic Games.
Roger
Whether
that.
you want your sport to be dictated to by the IOC and have all the rules applied like that, I don't know. I love the sport enough that I think, I know the ICF will hate me for saying it, but I think we can make a better job of it than the Olympics, to be fair.
Thanks, Jesus. You got a unanimity from all the commentary team here. Keep up the noise. We appreciate it.
Coming in from the right, Andy Burkett. It was clearly a little bit of hassle at the turn, and it's the Germans and the Hungarians there. Boros really hasn't done race management as well as it can be done in this one so far. There's work to do. Germans benefiting from the Hungarians being back there, and the front group goes to 5.
There's just a hint of Adrian Boros seeing red early on in the race, and that's not a good thing at this stage.
No, it's not. He spent an awful lot of energy fighting battles he can't win. McGregor looks good there, looks very comfortable.
Vault and Vault first into the
French,
portage.
you just don't want to be near the French. Burkett's forced to run.
Slow by the Spanish.
Long. Spaniards very slow out the water.
So Vault and Vault.
Running
McGregor
left
Mocker.
a little bit to hold off McGregor.
And they're running so well. They're going to run long as well. They're going to go past them into the lead. Laying down a marker early on. McGregor Mocker in first. Vault and Vault just behind them.
So
the Frenchman.
South Africa, Norway, France are the first 3 away. They're followed by the second South African crew, Burkett. It's the Spaniards slow out of the portage as the second group arrives.
So
all these boats will leave together. Everything's going to be okay. The Spaniards will use Burkett to get back to the front there. They'll try and duck round behind them, I think, into the safety of the group. So the Spaniards just duck. Maybe they're not going to. If I were them, I'd duck round to the right side of Burkett. But Boros in all sorts of trouble at the moment.
Burkett and Mocker that have won the spot at the front. Frenchman on their right, the Volts on their left. Burkett and Van Westhuizen settling into the diamond. The Spanish, lucky it must be said, it was messy, it was clumsy on the takeout. They had to run really hard to get back into touch.
Absolutely, and they're not the strongest Spanish crew in terms of the distance. We're looking now at that crew, and they don't seem to be making any impact on this field. And it just seems that whatever preparation the Spanish have done for this competition has not been ideal.
And I've got to say, the other boats in that front bunch will be happy not to have Fernandez and Buthan hovering in the background.
Absolutely, they will. So McGregor, Mocker leading for now. To their right is the French, Boulanger, Candy, Vold and Vold to the left, Burkett and Van der Westhuizen in the back. And at the back there is Laurence and Perez.
Boros burning too much fuel early on, too much emotional energy as well. Maybe a good time for him to take a couple of deep breaths, take stock, and you'll see him sitting in 7th. He's 16th off at this stage. The Volts leading. It's McGregor, Mocker, Burkett, Van Westhuizen, Boulanger and Candy in the French colours. 16 seconds back to the Hungarian boat.
The Spanish are in real trouble here. Vold and Vold, we've seen, do not want anyone taking their side wash. They defend it heavily each time there's an option to do so. And they don't want to lead either. You see him having a look over his shoulder. So well done from the Spanish. The only option they had was to go direct to the front of the group, and they've done it. The French may fancy taking on the Norwegians, but I certainly wouldn't. There's the Germans, Boros and Solti, in position they weren't expecting to be in. That gap's quite significant. So Spain from Norway, oh my word, another retirement, another possibly dead leg, it looks like, a numb leg there. The Hungarians in the Renata Chase partner, Barra had the same problem this morning. So he had a bad race for him yesterday as well. Peterson not on form after his sprint season. And these Spaniards, I'm pretty sure, are doing this strong lead because their compatriots are off the pace for now, and they want to put some space between them and Buzan and Fernandez. Smith and Gregory from Great Britain with two other chasers there, but they're a long way down now. This is Solti and Boros, and with the Germans, between the two of them, I just don't think they've got the firepower to get back to that front group. So one of the main players already, it seems, out of contention.
Cruz dropping left, right and centre. One of the questions coming in online, is it really hot? No, it's not. It's 32, 33 at the moment, which is hot-ish, but not to be a factor to this level.
Not hot enough to destroy someone in 2 laps. It's
100%.
I think, there's a few people around complaining of little stomach things. Myself, I had something last night. It stopped me getting my beauty sleep, but I don't think it shows.
Bring on the airline dinner. Well, according to Mojuka, the pace is too hot. Many from the front bunch will die, he or she says, figuratively. So there we go, back to the 5 boats at the front.
Laurence and Perez. Perez driving that boat. Laurence we saw in action in the under-23s. McGregor more than happy to be where he's sitting right now. Burkett and Van der Westhuizen untroubled. The Vold brothers are rapidly becoming the danger crew here. They have a huge turn of speed on them, and they could, you're projecting an awfully long way forward, I get that. But if anyone's going to do a Solti and Boros now on McGregor, it's going to be those two at the end of this race.
A little bit of contact in the turn there. Who's that on the inside?
The Spaniards around well.
The Spaniards away clean in the black boat. Burkett and Van Westhuizen are okay.
It's the French now at the back of the group.
All regroup safely.
I think the Norwegians will come around the Spaniards. And there you go. The French get pushed to the back again. The South Africans trouble-free. And only 5 boats now, I think, in contention. Faria, Buzan, Adam, and Vergoven and Rodriguez from Argentina. And they're almost a minute now off the pace. And a minute is some distance to make up on crews of this quality.
So there's the splits, the 5 boats, 20 seconds clear of the chasing group, which is being led by Adrian Boros and Laszlo Zolti.
Yeah, 20 seconds maybe. It's not terminal, but it's massively inconvenient, that's for sure.
It's the Argentinians, Garakachir and Garakachir.
Germans with Richter and Frick And 6-1-2, there is
Lindberg and
Torstensson from Sweden. Boros and Solti move far out to the right to try and get some clean water. Bit of a change coming up. Out the back of that group goes the Spaniards because they're coming round the outside of McGregor, who takes the lead. The Volds will squeeze Burkitt into the V. There won't be any resistance from Burkitt on that one. And gradually, I think these crews are going to work the French over until it's a group of 4. This is a concerted effort from McGregor to break, I think, Boros and Solti.
Give me a strategy from Vold and Vold over the 30 Ks. How are they going to play this if they're going to try and destabilize the 2 South African boats and the Spanish?
They don't have to do anything, I don't think. They just have to keep their powder dry, if you like. They've got it's self-preservation for them, and their strength is going to come in the last 200 meters if they're still there at that stage. They've obviously got a simple plan to be in the front 4. You've never seen them outside of that. They defend their wash quite aggressively, and when they need to come around, they come around with a certainty that the other crews respect. What was significant, I guess, at the 5K a couple of weeks ago was that Vold only really managed 4.5, or just over 4K of that. He didn't make it to the finish with the guys. He did get tired, and he did fade quite badly towards the end. McGregor will drop round the back of the Spaniards now. It's an opening for the French because the Volds, maybe Burkitt will come around the Volds. Have we seen the Volds in the V-Wash yet? I don't think we have. So I think they're going to defend the side. Burkitt's going to have a race with the French, and he's won that easily.
Nicely done.
So very tidy from Burkitt there. French a little bit slow to see the attack come in. The French just can't find a way into this group.
Not through any lack of trying. They're looking left, they're looking right, they're going for it, but there's just no one letting them in.
I think the other 4 crews see this as a group of 4 now. The French as a spare part. They're all happy to maintain their position, and they're also sure about what they want. There's no doubt in their mind, and they don't want to be the 5th one having to come all the way around the edge anymore. So the French are just going to take a kick in from here on in, really.
Just looking back to the gap to Boros and Salty, this pace must be quite fast. That gap has grown to probably about 30 seconds now, as Perez and Jorans are pushing the pace at the front there. And then the pull before, McGregor and Mocker, it looked like they were putting on some decent effort there. Yeah, and it's all helped to open this gap up to what it is.
Absolutely. I think McGregor was motivated to put the nail in Boros's coffin there. I think once that gap opens up, I think it's opened up too far already to have a sustained attack. The Boros and Salty letting the Germans lead now. Germans aren't going to be fast enough to close this gap.
Well, I've got to say, Adrian Boros was asking for it. He came out swinging, and they decided to put him in his hutch, and they've done it properly.
He was just massively inefficient on that first lap, and he took on several battles that he couldn't win. And for what purpose?
So the 2 South African boats enjoying plenty of support from the crowd, which is gathering, and as we saw yesterday afternoon, is likely to continue gathering. The luxury of live streaming means you can actually sit at home and see how things are doing, and if you're a fair weather punter, you'll come down if it looks like there's a good result heading for your team.
To our left here, the Danish crew that we saw retire earlier. It does look like it was a heat-related incident. He's clutching a cold bottle of water to the back of his neck there, and it does look like it was the heat that got to that crew.
So back at the front, Perez and Laurence at the front in the black boat. On the outside of the Frenchmen in the white caps, Candy and Boulanger, as they come down to the bottom turn can. But it's the Spanish that are going to be leading him into that turn can, heading into the second portage.
Bazagni and Bonacina there with with the Great Britain crew of Smith and Gregory. But here's the turn. They're just about to hit the first buoy now. Round go the Spanish. Norwegians safe on the inside, but only for now because the French are right on their tail. And
Spaniards
you just don't know. It's McGregor who's vulnerable to French attack here.
Oh, and it's a sluggish.
Norwegians in trouble also. They're struggling to get around the turn. This could open up for the French for the first time in a long time. McGregor needs to tuck inside the Norwegians before the French do. Here he comes now. And, it's hard. The French have come up with nothing again.
Welcome to
Round
Hank
go
McGregor
the
Racing.
Volts to the outside. They're not even going to let Burkett have the outside of that group. This is a significant battle, actually. I think, yeah.
Look at the turn of speed from these two.
Was impressive there. It's McGregor, sorry. I've got the South African crews mixed up. My mistake. So impressive turn of speed from McGregor. Volts still got what they wanted. The first wash out, and the French are done.
That's an important state.
It was Burkett then that put the nail in the coffin of the French, not McGregor. That was my mistake.
Hank's son watching with Granny. That was an important statement from McGregor and Mocker because they've just put the Volts back in their place when they thought they were going to use their burst of speed to get themselves to the front. Important little psychological battle won for Hank McGregor and Jasper Mocker.
It finished prematurely, that battle, though, because the Volts could see that McGregor was going to end up in the front and the Volts got what they wanted.
But it's
anyway.
the Volts out first.
So it wasn't a do or die. But McGregor's out first. Spaniards tidy. Burkett tidy. French in trouble. But the French, they could close the gap here.
Both South African crews running the normal portage. The Spaniards and the Norwegians going into the seconding zone.
Edwin
the
Bold
French lagging off the back.
At the front of the Norwegian boat. Doesn't look comfortable. And he's in. Oh, my word.
What a shocking place to put a boat.
There's a schoolboy error
what
there.
What a Muppet mistake.
That is just. That's not malicious. That's just incompetent. He had no idea what he was doing there. And that's what we're talking about with unpredictability. Right from the start, we labelled them and the French as unpredictable crews. And what are you even thinking when you do something like that? What are you going to do? Get in your boat one person at a time and seal launch it off the landing stage? It's comedy. It all ended well, though. Everyone's safe. The French regained contact because of that little melee. And we're all back to where we started.
Just heat of the moment, a brain implosion. The last thing we want is ITOs interfering and for the seconds to start ticking up on that penalty box for anybody at this stage. Just stupid. But back at the front, the red hair of John van Westhuizen at the back. The Michael House schoolboy paddling with Andy Burkett. The Spaniards on their right. Hank McGregor and Jasper Mocker on their left. The Frenchmen have now tucked in on the diamond, and the Volts who were responsible for that moment of madness. Let's have a look at that again. We're just going to have a look at just what were they thinking?
Can we play the circus music while we do it? Here we go. Here we go. Where are we going,
Why
boys?
not? Just push it in there.
What are we thinking at that moment? He's still thinking he can put the boat in. Finally lifts it up. Jasper very calm there as his paddle was lifted.
He dishes a little
impressed by that. But that's just, that's schoolboy errors right there.
And I'm afraid Jasper will remember that little blow to his cheek as well. Just Hank's taken one to the head, Jasper's taken one to the cheek, and they've managed to remain pretty calm and composed. But the great African way is that the elephant never forgets. It'll come back.
The big danger there was that Jasper held his ground and held his paddle tight and low, and they wouldn't have been able to drag the boat out. So, but for Jasper's calm head there, that would have been doubled, that whole incident. Oh, Josh Kippin's going
Josh Kippin on his
now.
own.
He's got no partner in sight. Please don't do a lap on your own. He is.
Josh, you want to stay there? You want? Well,
he's waiting. No one knows.
Josh Kippin looking for Brendan Rice. What's happened to Brendan Rice?
Here he is. He's limping.
Oh, he's limping.
Got a dead
Doesn't
leg.
look good.
He can't move on the land. Josh, what a painful wait for Josh Kippin.
Every second feels like an hour.
It's horrible.
Get in there, Brendan.
Even when he gets in there. Oh, no.
Josh is trying to keep his chin up on this bit. Wow, the frustration must be eating him.
So,
sorry, mate, let's go.
What causes a dead leg is always a bit of a mystery, but certainly a lean in a K2 doesn't help that situation. Maybe he hasn't got his own seat in his boat and he's had to set up a seat that he's not used to. They come all the way from Australia. I doubt if they brought the boat with them. frustration there from Josh, and I think we're going to see him pull out in a minute.
No, and there's a smile from Josh Kippen. That's it. Good night,
Yeah.
nurse. I think that's their race run.
No, that's it. They're done.
Josh is a good guy. These guys are really good mates. They travel the world together doing river races and marathons and surf ski, and it's eating Brendan alive. So, he's going to have to buy his mate a beer or 10 tonight to make up for that.
You know, although it's sad for Josh, it's more brutal for his partner there, because his partner's caused that problem, unwittingly granted, but terrible end to their race.
Back at the front, it's Perez and Lawrence who are still leading. Lawrence looking over his shoulder to see who's there. He finds the frame of Hank McGregor right in his rear view mirror. That must give anybody a scare.
We're going to see a lot of leading from these Spaniards. Neither South African are particularly motivated to lead. The Norwegians do not want to lead at all, and the French, I don't think, are capable of leading at this stage. But leading, to be fair, is the French's only option to make their way back into the group of four. The only choice they've got is to come around everybody, get to the front, and have the group reform around them.
Yeah, and you can't do that for 30 k's.
Slight reshuffle come in. Burkett.
Boom, there goes Burkett. Matched by the Volts.
Yeah, it's a risky move at best. The chance of it succeeding is very slim, and to do it to a crew that you've already seen don't particularly know what they're doing is way, way too risky.
I'm not too sure what Burkett was thinking there, but he obviously is feeling really strong in the diamond there, and thought if the gap opened up he could come through. But let's just hope he conserves that for when it is his turn.
Possibly Burkett, from the V, he's had more time than anyone else to have a look round and see what's happening with the group behind them. He might be aware, we can't see it here, we've got no idea what that gap is, but possibly Burkett thinks that gap's closing and we need to pick the pace up a little bit.
Yeah, you might have felt the pace of the group is a bit slow, and like you said, Ivan, just a little tactic to just try and increase the average speed of the group.
The Spaniards here, very vulnerable to being used and abused.
Well, I was thinking exactly the same thing. I'm sure the other four would be happy just to sit in the pound seats and watch right now.
As it stands, early days, you're looking at the medalists being Norway and the two South Africans here. What we do know, though, is that Norway might not make it through another 5 portages unscathed.
So up to the top turn, Perez Laurent taking the lead. The Volts on the inside, good tight turn from them. They're going to get the slingshot around the inside.
Burkett's done a great job here. He's come out of the V to come on the inside of the group for this turn. We've seen the crew in the V-wash really fighting to get round the corners. Burkett goes round the Volts.
McGregor and Mocker up.
Finally, the Volts relinquish their place. In fact, as McGregor goes up, the French might have a bit of respite. But here, Boris Solti and the German crew, the Pauflers.
The gap was 20 seconds at the top turn, Let's see if we can get a sense of whether that is ballooning. And there's the front 5 with the Spanish crew of Perez and Lawrence dropping back onto the diamond after having pulled most of the opposite
40
lap.
seconds, the gap almost doubled on that lap. And 40 seconds is an awful long way.
Yeah, I think that's a very bruised Boros and Zolti.
Round go the Volds. They do not like sitting second wash out, and there's a lot of effort going into that, and an impressive effort at that. They're going to find themselves at the front, then they want to relax and let someone else lead. But I think they've kind of forced the issue there, and they're going to have to do a lead for the first time. Round come Faria and Rodriguez.
See the Czech boat having to brake every 3rd or 4th stroke to put in a double stroke on the left just to keep that boat turning, and that's frustrating.
All the crews are struggling to get around those turns. But it's not like they haven't done it before, and they know how tight they are. They've all been training here. They've done enough turns now to know that they need to organise themselves coming into the turn, which is exactly what you saw Andy Burkett do there. He dropped from the V, went on the inside of the boat to the right of the leader, and he got round very, very smoothly and slotted straight back into the V after the turn.
It's puzzling. You can't blame the equipment either, because most of them are taking the same line in. Most of them are actually paddling the same boat. There's probably one model, one brand of that particular maker that's making up 80% of the boats in this field.
Absolutely.
So the front five grinding away the miles. The Frenchman sitting on the outside, the Spaniards resting on the diamond. The Volt sitting on the right. The two South Africans up front.
Yeah, you saw Vold come round, end up in the lead, and we said he doesn't want to lead, and within 30 seconds he isn't leading. He's clearly got a method. It's his method, it's perfectly good method. It can get expensive if you keep having to come around people, but with the French being the weaker crew in this group, I think he's going to do well out of this. And all he's got to do is get through 5 portages, really, before the end sprint, and we've seen they've got to turn a pace on them. So Burkitt leading from McGregor and Vold with the Spaniards in the V.
Burkitt and Van Westhuizen at the front. Andy Burkitt has come on in leaps and bounds since that Gaio race where we saw him in the single, just apparently sort of mentally imploding on himself during the race, and you know him well.
Yeah, I mentioned it yesterday. Andy Burkitt's always been an extremely tactical racer since he was very young. That race in Gior was very unprecedented. I think it came down to steering issues more than tactical issues, but looking from the bank, it looked like he was making the wrong decisions at the wrong time continuously. But I think let's put it down to steering and watch how tactically he can race, because as far as I'm concerned, he's a very, very good tactical racer.
All the chatter online from the Spanish supporters saying, "Where's Walter Boustan? What's happened to him?" They were hoping for a heck of a lot more from him.
Well, nothing happened to him. He's just sort of never really got into the front group in the first place. He looked really tidy in the way he managed the position he was in, and they seem to be doing really well. And then another split happened, and it wasn't covered, and they haven't featured since. And I can't remember the last time we saw them when we've tracked back through the groups. So lead group of 5, the Volds finally pushed to the front. French still out the back. Burkitt taking a rest.
There's some major players in this group here. Do you think they're happy to have the French tag along for the ride at this stage? They're not doing any damage.
I don't think they care one way or the other at this stage. It's a 4-boat race to me. French just can't make any impact into what's happening in that group at all. They're just passengers.
Well, let's extend that knowledge. Would you like to have the Volts on board if you were looking about possible passengers or people that you would like to rub off over the next lap or two?
The Volds are fine to have there now because they're at least on the water, they're predictable. They don't, they're going to defend their side, so you know what they're going to do. But as the race goes on, I think less and less you're going to want them there, because we've seen a turn of speed from them a couple of times, and it's a dangerous turn of speed.
It was amazing to see the French had a small opportunity there, and they came into the front of the bunch and they challenged on the left. And within about 30 seconds, the group had reshuffled and spat them out to the side again. So, yeah, I think people are giving them a bit of a hard time, but they had an opportunity, they made the most of it, and the group just totally dominated them.
Listen, you know how fast McGregor can go at top speed, so you can't take him on if he doesn't want to be taken on. The Volds are exactly the same. Andy Burkitt the same. Spaniards are probably the slowest in terms of top speed, but they're so well protected by the other 3. And the other 3 are protecting them because the Spaniards are prepared to do more than their share of the work.
Yeah, low risk threat and willing to do the workhorse. So I think when the Frenchmen try to push their way in, the bus conductor said, "Let me have a look at your tickets." No, second class tickets, you go to the
Boris
back.
and Salty here, they are on the charge, make no mistake. The gap is way less than the 40 seconds it was at the top turn. In fact, it might even have halved since the top turn, and that's only about 5 minutes ago. So if they do get back, it's all going to be gloves off again. The nice, tidy arrangements that these 4 have had will be challenged for sure. So coming in now, a few meters now to the turn buoy. There's no stress. Be interested to see how McGregor manages this turn in the V. You think you trust him to do it well. He's moved to the right of the tail of the lead boat,
Burkitt's been
which
good,
is the right thing to do. You just don't need your nose in that plume where it is now, because that's what forces you out wide. So here come the Spaniards. Burkett to their right, McGregor in the V, French getting what's left, Volds on the left there. Quite a high stroke rate from the Volds, I think. Maybe they're thinking of, yep, here we go.
There they go, they're coming in hard on the left. The Volts burning into the portage.
I really don't understand why they're doing this.
Spain trying to match them.
This is the first time we've seen how fast the Spanish can go. Not fast enough, it would seem. But what do you think the Volds have gained out of that?
Oh, a little bit of psychological high ground, Ant, but gee, all they've done is they've tired themselves out going into the portage.
Yeah, if it was a challenge against McGregor or Burkett, I'd say, yeah, for sure. But they were challenging the Spanish there, so maybe it boosts their own confidence, but I don't think Burkett or McGregor will feel threatened by that move.
Well, nothing gained going into the portage because they've just backed right off now and the group is reformed.
They did no damage to the Spaniards because the Spaniards could call it a day when they chose to. And they did no damage to Burkett or McGregor because they were just in the big waves out the back. So easy pickings.
Burkett, Van Westhuizen have paddled in, they've taken out close and they've run
out
hard.
really well there though.
Yep.
Very tidy at that end of the portage.
It's the French.
McGregor, Mocha going in for a drink stop.
It's normally Hankstad Lee with that duty, but Hankstad Lee is currently in the States.
Very relaxed from McGregor. It's an opportunity for the French. It'll be a brief opportunity, but there is one.
McGregor
the French this time.
They're in!
Yeah,
slipped in.
Two unpredictable crews. They did exactly the same. They tried to fight the Spanish for no gain at all. They had their opportunity to regain the 4, and we're going to see that, I'm sure, in replay. But this is the last thing you do. You're the front man in a K2. The last thing you do is put the nose of your boat into the water, because then you lose all control. And you've got no chance, absolutely no chance of regaining that control. So we'll see it, I'm sure. And here they are. And this could be the last they see of the front 4.
Split-second mistake with massive consequences for the French pairing of Boulanger and
Candy.
So
they chose to battle the Spaniards. Here's the battle starts. Front man puts his boat in. What do you think's going to happen if the boat's moving forward and you put the front in? It's always going to disappear out into the middle of the river. And there you go, right there. There's the price. I missed what was happening at the front end of that. Did you see anything at the front there, Dave?
Burkett and Van Westhuizen ran long, put in first and got away clean. But very lucky that boat didn't fill with water. If there'd been slightly more momentum, the water would have poured into the front cockpit and that would have been them done.
Yeah, we highlighted 2 crews right at the beginning of this race that were going to be unpredictable and unreliable, was the French and the Norwegians. And we've seen it in 2 portages in a row.
Yeah, they were lucky that they didn't get any water into their boat, but unfortunately it was just that small mistake that has cost them, and they're off that front group. It's going to be hard work for them to get back, and I think the only way they're going to get back there if it's from the chasing group from behind.
Well, the interesting split is to look back and see how that chasing crew of the Hungarians are zooming in on them, because they might suddenly find Adrian Boros and Laszlo Zolti on their shoulders far quicker than they would like.
I think the French are going to regain contact with this group. They're not far off the back. They've run wide. When they start to turn left, you know they think they can get there. They'll come down the big rolling waves.
The Argentinians leading the chase group out of the portage, which also includes Jakub Adam and Jakub Zavrel in the Czech colours.
McGregor choosing to give the Spanish a little bit of a harder ride. He's coming round as the Volds take up the lead. Voluntarily this time. In come Argentina and Sweden for their portage. All clean, out and away.
So 4 at the front. Now let's start thinking battle strategies. Surely you want to try and encourage the Vols to get to the front and do as much of the legwork now as possible. If you can rotate that between the Spaniards and the Volts, you want to try and just take the edge off that, particularly Volts' burst of speed.
I think that's the danger in there. It's the only danger left for the South African crews. McGregor has a huge turn of speed anyway. It's 50-50, but it's still a risk if those Norwegians are fresh at the end, most definitely. And what's an even bigger risk is having a really stressful last portage with the Norwegians included, or the French included, because you just don't know if they're going to put their boat across the front of yours or not.
Yeah, they're proper wild cards in the pack. So the French are back on the bunch. It's back to 5 at the front. The Volts taking up the pull. The South African crews on either side of them. The French hanging on the back.
Boros and Salty haven't given up the chase by any means back there.
So the Czech crew paddles down, looking for a rotation of the pull in the chasing bunch. Jakub Adam looking back over his shoulder at his partner.
Ferreira, Rodriguez also there, Smith and Gregory, Italians, Bazzani and Bonacina also back there. The gap has opened up again, I think, and still.
Oh, they're on.
Josh Kippin's running. And they look to be moving much better this time. So they're going to get in the water just behind the German crew of Richter and Frick.
You see the Aussies just completing the journey. Doesn't surprise me, actually. Both of them are top guys, real ultra-distance athletes. I don't see the word bail in either of their vocab, so they'll go the whole way through. Tough guys, the Aussies.
Absolutely. It's not the race he wanted, that's for sure.
French come to be back on the front, on the back of that front group as the Vols are pulling into that top turn.
So Volds leading for now. From the two South Africans, Spain in the background. See how they manage the turn in the V-wash. And it looks slowly like everyone's learning how to get round in group formation. French have got a little window of opportunity to come up to the right of McGregor now. They're trying it, and the Spanish are holding them off this time. It's the best effort we've seen the French do, and they're going to try and make it stick. They're going to end up leading, and finally the group is going to arrange around the French, and they get a little bit of respite. Meanwhile, Boros and Salty.
That gap is definitely shrinking.
Most definitely.
That chasing bunch being led by Zolti and Boros is definitely closing in on the front 5. It's got to be good news. I think Boros might have digested what he'd done in the first 2 or 3 laps and then just realized it was pointless, retooled the plan, and is now grinding back. If he's got any hopes of going home with the medal, he's going to have to certainly broach the contact, rejoin that group.
A little bit of change in dynamic in the front group there with the French leading now. The other 4 are going to have to decide whether they get into the rotation or not. Smith and Gregory leading that pack of 5. So Spaniards taking on Vold for the side. He hasn't given one up yet, and he's not giving it up now.
The Volds don't like to concede much, do they?
But how has no one learned that yet? The Volds will only drop back if the Spaniards lead, and they'll move over to the Spaniards, sit on their wash. They've got good control over the speed of their boat, the Norwegians. They're to make sure that the French weren't going to lead if they moved to the Spaniards, and they've done that. And there'll be a Spanish leader in a minute. So McGregor will, no, not McGregor, it's going to be Burkett on the right of the group, will duck in at some stage. Now
McGregor looked around the right and then decided to come back in for the diamond.
I'm not sure, he should be to the right.
No, he's coming to the right again, there he goes, McGregor and
French are going to go, and now we're going to have Burkett taking on the Volds, but Volds finally have conceded the side and gone into the V. and the French are back on the 5th, and the group's a happy group again.
I think the right move by the Vols there. I think with the French pulling, they were left with 2 strong boats either side, which wouldn't be happening on the second wash, would have challenged, and ultimately they would have been squeezed out the back. So only happy to settle down onto the diamond when they knew the French were the ones that were going to be at the back of the group.
Andy Burkett, Jean van der Westhuizen, you saw him chattering to his partner a few moments ago. Young man, fueled by the frustration of not having the race go his way in the under-23 K1 race.
These guys have put some work in.
Yep.
You hope this time they get some reward for their efforts, but I can't see any waves from the leading group, so they're still a fair distance behind.
They need the powerfulness to come with them, but I don't know if they're going to stay with them much longer.
Strange they're choosing to be that close to the edge when they're doing all the work as well.
You saw Jean van der Westhuizen in a shot a few moments ago. Prefect in Farfield House at Mike Klaus, so a very emotional week for him as well. Not only did Friday not go according to plan as far as his under-23 K1 race is concerned, but the schools also just had the memorial service for the tragedy which saw one of the boys lose their life in a bus accident in the week. So it's been a very emotionally sort of challenging week for all of the pupils. He had a whole bunch of his schoolmates down to support him, and that didn't go according to plan. He's a very strong-headed guy, and he can only redirect that energy into motivating him today, and I strongly suspect that's going to be an advantage to him.
See what the Volds do here with the French. Now they've been forced onto the 5th wash.
Hank chatting to Andy. Jean's obviously overheard that conversation, and they're looking back. The word is probably out. He's a little bit worried about the prospect of Boros coming.
Straight into the side of McGregor. French get pushed back. Spaniards are going to challenge them for that V. They're going to push up until Burkett squeezes in. The Spaniards very cleverly done. Very tidy from the Spaniards. No risk with that move because Burkett had gone slightly wide. There was a gap opened up. They put the nose just ahead of the French nose before they get pushed back into the V. And that was a very, very tidy move from the Spaniards. French are in no man's land again. You're not going to take on those Norwegians for the side wash. So they're on the 5th until a little group change. The Volds will go round McGregor. McGregor more than happy to get pushed into the V, I'm sure. And the speed looks to be stepping up again.
Down past the start pontoon. Coming into what will be their 4th portage of 7.
And you can see why the speed's picked up, because there's no doubt now that Boros and Salty are gaining ground. It's 20 seconds probably.
It's going to come at a cost though.
A huge cost. They've been working at this rate for a couple of laps now. And they still, it's 20 seconds, but a couple of strong efforts from McGregor and Burkett combined could open up another 20 in a couple of minutes, to be fair.
Love to hear the chatter if and when they do get back onto that front bunch. Woohoo, favourite friends just come to the party.
I think the crew that will be least happy to see them there is probably the French, because they're going to start having to fight even for what they're getting now.
The powerful on the wave of the Hungarians as they try their level best to close the distance between themselves and the 5 boats at the front. Of course, when they do get to the bottom turn can, which they're approaching, if they do spare themselves a quick glimpse over their right shoulders, they will see the fact that Adrian Boros and Laszlo Zolti are zooming in on them with intent.
It's like Christmas for the Powerfulers, though, right? They're getting a free ride back. It's not to say it's easy, of course,
no,
but
fantastic example of how to take on those turns
that was a turn. That's probably the best turn we've seen done so far. Looks like the Norwegians might be motivated to get to the portage first. There's the chase pack. A little bit crazy from Boris to squeeze the Germans to that extent. But he's on the charge, that's for sure.
And there's the gap.
They're starting to get into the rough water behind the lead group, which means they're a lot closer than when we last saw them.
And there's no urgency from the front. Well, not yet, as they're coming into the portage. There's almost certainly going to be a burn. The Volt's back at the front.
For a calmer portage this time. McGregor might be moving out to take... No, he's not. From the head-on view, it looked like
there come the Frenchman on the left.
Moving out to take on the Volts, but no, the French just getting in contact. Chase group closing all the time now. Spaniards dipping out of the V. They must be close to the portage, 50 meters to go. French struggling. The gap, that's a more realistic representation of the gap back to Boris and Salty. And the French look to be struggling here.
Burkett and Van Westhuizen are going to paddle short. They're going to jump out first. The Volts are second in.
Very nicely
done.
Burkett.
There's an opportunity for Burkett. The Volts are out quickly.
Spaniards a little bit slow. French have lost some ground, but they're clean out of their boat.
McGregor and Mocker just have this uncanny knack of just developing instant momentum of the boat. There's no pause in that forward thrust of the boat.
I thought they were a little bit slow getting out there, really. They came in on the side.
Just very relaxed. We've seen Hank do this in the past. Very relaxed. They're getting in, comfortable position on the group, and just totally in control at this stage of their boat.
Yep. Here come the French. See if they're going to spear anyone this time. No.
Burkett and Van der Westhuizen off cleanly after a solid run. Just pushing the pace slightly as they pull away.
And in get Boros and Salty now. They definitely are closing the gap. The French are going to become a target for them because they're on their own out the back of that group of 5. There's the French in the white boat, and it can't be far back for the camera to pan to see these two. Boros and Salty. Could be. They can use the French a little bit here.
Yeah, they're going to ditch the Germans, and they're going to have the French in their sights. Real intent from the Hungarians. In fact, that's a great shot, actually. There's still some work before they try and catch the French crew that's fallen off the back, or who have gone wide.
Burkett's paddles down, plays to Boros this one. Norwegians, they're not going to take the pull. It's going to be McGregor. I think he's seen it first. I think he's going to come through and put in a decent lead here.
Do you think they're getting splits every time they come through the portage? Would there be a warning that Boris is zooming in?
I think they know it. You feel it. You know it. I think it's surprisingly accurate how well you judge those gaps and whether they're closing. I mean, the gaps close at less than a second a minute, but you know whether it's closing or it's not closing.
Well, there was a glance over the shoulder of Laurence there, and he's clearly said to the rest of the group, "Boy, they're coming, they're coming."
Germans have done a great job to get back in contact with the Hungarians there. But the gap, constant for now. Certainly didn't shrink it over the portage.
And did I see a little dip in Hank McGregor's head once the word whizzed around the group that Boris is now back in business?
Yeah, Boris and Salty have been going at this pace for quite a while now, and it's definitely going to be taking it out of them. And I think in reality, if they did have to catch up, they're going to be a little bit tired. But I think a lot of these guys, they've seen what Boris and Salty are capable of when they're strong and on the bunch, and they've got a hell of a lot of zip in them. And at the back of their minds, there'll be that doubt that, jeepers, if these guys are so strong to catch, maybe they're still going to have that zip. But so just keeping it safe by trying to stay ahead and keeping away from them. But yeah, Boris and Salty, if they catch, they're going to be a little bit tired. They've worked at this pace for a very long time now. But yeah, who knows? These guys, they just keep going and going.
Powerful's there. They're with Boris and Salty. Fine bit of artwork on their boat there. I mean, if you're going to have a city skyline, that's a city skyline done well between the two paddlers there. Jacob Adam, Charlie Smith and Faria from Czech, Great Britain and Portugal respectively.
The Spaniards going left. Rotate.
Burkett fairly quick past McGregor. There wasn't a delay there. So they are conscious, I think, that they need to move on a little bit. And judging by how the French are doing there, the speed's quite high at the moment.
Boulanger and Candy.
That's foreshortened that view. I don't think it's as close as it looks there, but certainly Boros can sniff the back of that group now. And a poor turn from this group will leave someone very close to that second chase pack of the Hungarians and the Germans. It's fragmenting a little bit. Not quite sure what's happening here. It's the Volds are way back on that wash. McGregor has to come across to the Volds because that's where the wash works out.
Look,
and
look
here
at that,
we go.
look at that. There's nothing in it.
Here we go.
That is a massive charge back by Adrian Boros and Laszlo Zolti.
So this group is going to be expanded very, very shortly
and
now.
there go the Powerflers as well. Game on.
Now, if I were these two crews at the back, I wouldn't want to make contact quite until the turn because you're going to get caught in the melee of the turn. If you can just leave that little gap for now and then turn well yourselves. But they're motivated to close the gap.
You're not going to stop Adrian Boros now. He's coming in hot onto the tail of that group. Boulanger and Candy are going to be the vulnerable ones at the back here. They've been feeding off the scraps of the table, but there comes Adrian Boros and Laszlo Zolti. They're going to be right in the mix by the time they get to that top turn.
You have to hand it to them. That is an impressive chase. They've done that 90% by themselves. The Germans have helped them occasionally, but it's an awkward time to close to the front group because the turn is roughly now, and if it all splinters again, you find yourself with another 5 lengths.
Just have a look at the conversation going on between Jasper Mocker and Hank McGregor. Jasper looked over his shoulder and said, "They're here." Hank turned over his shoulder to Jasper and laughed.
That's Jasper's job. He has to keep Hank informed of anything that's happening behind him. And here we go around the turn. And
it's tight, but it's clean
tight.
so far.
It's going to be okay for all of them, I think.
Neatly done by Andy Burkett and John
round Van der Westhuizen as well. Spaniards lead. Group changes. Germans in trouble. French in trouble. And that's not helping Boros. Boros just needs a break at this stage. Interesting move at the front.
Oh, side by side, contact.
It was a strange one. No damage done to anyone there. It was Burkett who tried to hold off the Norwegians. Didn't really need to, but there was no harm in trying.
Well, the Powerflers look like they're lagging right off the back there. Managed to benefit from the charge of Adrian Boros and Laszlo Zolti to get back onto the front bunch, but looks like they're going to be the casualties for that.
Boros has still got, he's with the group now, but he's still got a huge job to do there because he's got to break in at some stage into the main four. And I can't see anyone in there who's going to be happy to let him do that. The Spanish were the ones who were motivated to speed up after the turn when they saw they were in trouble a little bit. So they don't want them there. Neither of the South Africans want them there. And Vold don't want anyone there to take their side wash. So although they've made contact, it's still a huge jump to get in contention in this race.
We've also seen how hard they've worked catching up now. That's what will be interesting to see if there is a massive change in speed and a big move from any of these boats, what they've got left in the tank to respond. And that's going to be telling. And if they can respond, then that means game on. They're in the game properly. So we'll have to see when the next big move comes.
Absolutely dead right there. Great analysis from Ant there. It is the first test they get after the catch-up, which really shows you how they're feeling. So far, no tests. If the Germans can regain contact, then there will be one really comfortable wash for one of those back 3 paddlers. But for now, the Germans still just off the tail.
So the Spaniards leading. McGregor and Mocker to their left. The Volts to their right. Burkett van Westhuizen on the diamond. They've done more than their fair share at the front, but I guess that's also part of the game plan. They're really having to pay their fees to be on this group. Nobody will be unhappy about them willing to take more than their fair share at the front.
Right, here comes Boros. He's going to give it a little shot to come up the left-hand side of the group, which is exactly where he left off when it all went wrong for him.
And there's McGregor on the outside. That's who he's going to have to deal with.
No, he hasn't moved up. It looked like he was going to in the last shot. He's settled for now. They'll be taking on as much replenishment as they can. Palplers have done a great job. And here comes Boros. We've seen this before about 4 laps ago. It didn't work then. And you know what?
McGregor's shadowing him.
It's not going to work now because McGregor's just said no.
He's
and
closing
Boros
him out.
should call it a day now. Absolutely, he should back off now because it's not going to happen for him unless McGregor leads.
This is exactly the cause of what led him to falling off the group in the first place. So he's burning all that energy up the side, and against Hank and Jasper, of all people, he should really be challenging on the other side.
Yeah, Hank doesn't want to lead. So sooner or later, Hank will defend his position there against Boros, but will fall back onto the wash of the Volds or whoever come through. Unless it's worked out well this time for Boros because Hank has been forced to lead. It's not somewhere he wanted to be. And I think the pace will be pretty slow for a bit.
A big well done to the Hungarians there then. That was a risky move and it's paid off for them. But yeah, they clearly are feeling okay after that hard effort for the last few laps to try and catch it all the way back up to the front group.
But Burkett having to hold off the Volds. The Volds just can't work the group in any other way. And they've been squeezed into the V. But you can see the V's open for the Spaniards again. No, the Volds have closed the door. It was tense there for a moment. But France and Germany suffering now. And it's the Spaniards for now. And what I think will happen now is the Spaniards will come around the Hungarians who will let them in, I think. And the Volds are going to be finding themselves getting drained of energy very, very quickly from now on. I can't believe Boros is holding them off. There's just no value in it. It's like a schoolboy mistake.
But he's done it again, which is really surprising. He's held them off. I think it's really, really shallow where Perez and Yamada, Perez and Jorens are paddling on the far side there, so that was in their favour. But jeepers, wily.
But they could have been cut into the V and safe in the V for quite a while there. And it's just, I don't know, it's such an expensive way he's gone round this course today.
Very expensive.
Especially since he's been expending all that gas in the catch-up. He should actually be sitting in his hutch and behaving for 20 minutes.
He could be sat in the V now. Now, the Volds would then try and take out Andy Burkett, and Burkett wouldn't let him do that with 100 or so metres to go to the turn. So Boros could be safely tucked in the V and loving life right now. I mean, he's way more comfortable than he has been for several laps, don't get me wrong. But just seems unnecessary. French and Germans to the right of the group there. And out of the V comes, I can't remember, Vold out of the V. McGregor and Burkett side by side. This is serious from both of these crews. Neither wants to let go on this one. And it's McGregor dominant. Vold's in trouble. They're going to have to get into the V fairly quickly now. Duck round the back of Burkett and up they come. And we might have ourselves a new 4.
Yep.
Good tactical moves from the Volds there. They did everything right, and as a result, they've ended up in the V. We've still got the Spanish close on the tail there, making up on this turn. But amazing to see Boros and Salty what they're throwing out after such a hard effort on the course, and still showing no signs of tiring at this stage.
If it does break to these 4, it becomes really interesting because we've got 2 crews with an incredible turn of speed to take on the South Africans at the end. And it's probably the least comfortable pairings that the South Africans want with them at this stage. Spain still hanging in there though, and they can pick up something at the portage.
France and Germany off the back there, fair to say.
It's
5 and 10 seconds back.
Yeah, French first. Germans are done.
McGregor and Mocker at the front. Jasper just looking over his shoulder to see who's on his left, and he knows that's Adrian Boros and Laszlo Zolti. On his right, he finds Andy Burkett and Jean van Westhuizen, and the vault sitting comfortably. Coming into portage number 5 of 7.
French regaining contact.
So that lets Spain and France tack onto the back. It's only the powerfuls who have been dropped in the process. Very pedestrian at this stage as they go past the pontoons in the approach to the actual takeout to the portage. McGregor and Mocker looks like they're going to be leading all the way in.
Coming long on the portage, plenty of room for everyone there.
McGregor, Mocker quickly out.
Burkett also well away. They're struggling from the Norwegians.
There's a drop from the vaults.
The French are in trouble as well. Vaults also want to come into the drinks lane, so they're going to be very vulnerable on this portage now. I don't think they've really woken up to the fact that there's damage being done to them. Now they have. Now they're running hard. But now we've got
South Africa, Hungary.
An unreliable crew in a stressful position, and here come the Volts. Let's see what they do. Fighting the French. Oh, it couldn't be worse. But the Volts done unbelievably well there. They're going to come out third. Credit to them. Boros is fighting for his comfort position in the group. The Spaniards are trying to hold him off. They couldn't. And got to hand it to the Norwegians there. We were laughing at them earlier, but they did extremely well on that portage from the position they were in.
They were under
6.
I think they sensed they were under the cosh having come into the feed zone, but they responded superbly.
The whole dynamic of this group is going to have to change a bit now with adding Boros and Salty. It's slowed down, but we've got the Vold going again. But I think no one really wanting to do the real work, just challenging for positions. But it's going to be interesting to see now what Boros and Salty do, comfortably on that first wash. But everyone's going to be seeing them as a real threat now.
McGregor held off the Volds there, which is his choice. He had the option of dropping into the V where the French are, but he chose to hold the Volds off, and the Volds for once are having to tough it out. In fact, they're going to duck behind, I think, the South Africans, and the Volds we could be seeing the beginning of weakness in this crew. Round come the Spaniards. Salty and Boros have managed in the last 10 minutes to establish themselves in this group.
Pedals down for Zolti. Boros is fiddling with his juice. They're just a little unsettled in that boat.
Boros now doing the same. And the French, after all the hurt has been dished out to them, are now in the V-wash.
Andy Burkett, Jean van Westhuizen happy to tap the pace off.
And
at
are we
the front.
seeing Salty and Boros now?
Spain coming around the outside.
It's impressive. I'm sure Burkett will let McGregor round. Almost begging him to come round there. He asked him almost. So, and I think we can see the beginning of the end for the Norwegians.
So Boros and Zolti hit the front.
They couldn't have made harder work of it to this stage.
Psychologically, this would be a real bonus for them right now. You can sort of put that whole previous chapter away. New race on.
Yeah, they seem to be pulling hard at the front there, but psychologically for them, we're not really sure how they're feeling. But psychologically for the group, they're showing to the group that they are strong.
At the same time, though, the South Africans are both working a lot less than they are. So Italians struggling with a boat full of water. So Argentina calling on Great Britain to do some work. The Czechs going with them. and behind is the Portuguese, Faria and Rodriguez.
So one more full lap.
You know what's really sad at the end of this? It's the end of it. We're finished for the weekend. And I'm not ready to end it just yet.
Yeah, we're just getting into this.
So the Volds have settled in. A bit of relaxation for them, which I think was very timely.
Adrian Boris and Laszlo Zolti taking the pull up to the top turn. Can McGregor, Mocker. The Spaniards, Perez and Lawrence. One full lap, one short lap.
It's getting tense now. Two long laps, one short lap left to go.
Yeah, spot on the money there. Don't want to bring down the team average.
A little bit of confusion in the commentary box, but we've got it organised now. It's two long laps, one short lap to go. The crowd on the edge of their seats there.
More cheering needed, please, Rob.
Solti, Boros continue to do the work at the front of this group.
So the Hungarian crew of Adrian Boris and Laszlo Zolti at the front. Hank McGregor, Jasper Mocker, the defending champions, sitting immediately on their left. Perez and Laurence on their right.
South Africans have done virtually nothing in this race. They haven't been stressed, they haven't been stretched. They look very, very strong to me. There's problems from the French again. French.
Somebody going very wide there at the back.
There goes Boros again. Because a bit more hard work is exactly what he needs right now. There's the French, struggled to get round, and it was the Norwegians that suffered. And the Norwegians do not need to be suffering at this stage, because that's the result of falling off the back of the front group. It's a lonely journey round. Oh, luckily it all slows down.
And it's the Spaniards that go to the front now.
Takes a V, the front V, after 6 laps. He finally, that's his first visit into the front V. And what a relief that will be to him. The Volds look to me to be in a spot of bother. Swedes there, called it a day.
Torstensen and Lindberg. Done. Heat.
And still the Norwegians. It's a brutal crawl up to the front. 2 laps ago, we would have seen them blast to the front and cut in on that front wave. Not so now. Spaniards take the lead. Burkitt to the left on screen, McGregor to their right on screen, Boros, Solti finally getting a well-deserved rest. McGregor sitting way, way back on that wash, and I think that's just to disrupt the V for Boros and Solti. It just makes it slightly more uncomfortable, and to say that's a little bit harsh, it's harsh but fair, and it just ruins your comfort in the V. It takes just a little bit of assistance away.
I think what I've noted here with Adrian Boris is his remarkable fitness. Normally in the past, in July we have a big race in South Africa, the Berg River Marathon, which is 230 kilometers, and the preparation for that race takes months and months of hours and hours of long distance. There's always argument in the South African camp whether to allow the athletes to do it or not before the World Championships. They say the distance just takes off that top end speed off the athletes. But one thing it does do, it makes you fit. it allows you to grind and grind at very high top end speeds for a very, very long time. Hank McGregor over the years has kind of made that race his own. He's managed to do it year after year, and as a result been remarkably fit. Very interesting decision though this year, Hank McGregor deciding not to do the Berg River Marathon and rather focus on his top end zip so that he can be really prepared for this year's World Championships. Adrian Boris on the other side has decided to go and do the Berg River and make sure he's coming into this race as fit as he possibly can be.
I think Boris has got real luxury of having Laszlo Solti in the back, who has an incredible turn of speed. Some athletes just have that natural speed, and Solti is one of those. And maybe he's relying on him to do that bit for him.
So perhaps surprisingly 6 boats on the front bunch as we head into the final third of this race.
It's testament to how fast and how hard Boris and Solti had to work to get there. You see how much the Germans have suffered and can't keep up the pace at all now they're on their own. There they are in the background, and it's going to be a long journey for them on their own. It looks like a possible 7th place for them, which is a decent result by anyone's standards, but the frustration of seeing a crew you were with 1 lap ago mixing it with the front group is huge. You see how there, and you can see it even better from the back. Because McGregor's so far back, Boris has to use McGregor's wash as his primary wash and only gets secondary from the other 2. And you just have to move towards the boat that's the furthest back. It's just, that's where the discomfort comes in. It's still a great wash there, don't get me wrong. But normally you'd want to be lined up exactly with the tail of the Spaniards in front of you, and they can't do that right now. French looking comfortable in the back of that group again. Throwing a little lifeline after the portage. And here we go. Burkitt goes. I think he was forced by the Volds. And
Burkitt and Van Vesthuizen are shadowing them all of the way.
This is
the Spaniards
pretty mean.
have gone
This
on a
is
completely
brutal.
different line.
You can see how much the others are suffering here. McGregor's done the best out of that. He will move wide on the Spaniards. Now he's going to cut in behind the new leader, which is Burkitt. McGregor spent pretty much 0 on that effort. On the other hand, the Volds spent a lot on that, as did Burkitt, to be fair. And so that has just strengthened McGregor's hand big time. What happens there as the group speeds up to that level of speed is the waves get further and further back. So McGregor doesn't have to match the acceleration. He cannot accelerate until the waves actually fall back to him almost. They come back to you, and then only then do you need to accelerate slightly and roll back down the wave as the group slows. And he did it so well. And Boris again, no. He's coming around the outside. I'm not sure what the Spanish attitude to him overtaking would be at this stage. I think they might let him through if he comes through. They'd be putting the V just at the right time to get round the turn with not enough time for another attack. So maybe they'd let him, but for now, he's on the outside of the group again.
So Andy Burkitt and John van Vesthuizen.
Here goes Boris.
Boris
taking
going
on the
Spaniards.
Outside. Spaniards are not letting him have it. Oh no.
And now the Volts are coming on the inside.
Burkitt just squeezing his speed up. He doesn't have to do much because the turn's coming.
So it's
McGregor having to fight a little bit here because he's going to have to get the wash. He's made it through. He's done well.
Let's keep this tidy on the turn.
A little bit vulnerable on the turn. Boris just ducked behind him. Did very well to do that. The Volds also taking the turn tight. They'll come in on the side of the South Africans again, I think. And it's going to be a race for the 4th place here. I think that's McGregor, the first white boat in the back of that 4. And you can see him rolling with the waves.
But it's Burkitt and the schoolboy John van Vesthuizen are going to be the first in. The Spaniards, Perez and Laurent, are just on their left. Just pinching myself here. There's 18-year-old Jean van Westhuizen mixing it with the big dogs here. Sure, that's the last thing he's thinking on his mind, that they're in a very strong... The Volts on their right. McGregor and Mocker have slipped right back onto the diamond.
Efficient again from McGregor. He's looking increasingly strong in this race now.
And for all that chest thumping, Boris and Zolti are right at the back.
I think you nailed it right there. Just seems to be picking some incredibly difficult battles when there's, even if he won those battles, there's not a huge amount to gain from them. Coming left now, try and get in to the portage for a long run. But everyone seems to be coming in fairly, no, they're not too early. But yeah, the Spanish, Boris is going to have to wait for the Spaniards to get out. They are out, so he's lucky.
The Spaniards are
Spaniards away.
Volts are
Boris
quick.
Second to last pick the boat out. The French in all sorts of
and
trouble.
the French have lost contact with their boat.
And the Spaniards are running hard. Burkitt running well. McGregor safe where he is, provided the Norwegians are predictable. So Boros is in trouble here. Down come the French. They're going to put their boat in on top of the Norwegians, paddles, but it's safe so far.
South Africa, Spain,
Burkitt
South Africa.
Not really going for it as he comes out the portage, but I think South African dominance established there. The Spaniards have done well to force the issue, and Boros again a few lengths back.
Maybe just a perspective that Boros's reserves are lower than anybody else, having had to work so hard to get on.
I think,
and I
without
think they know
doubt
it
now. Yeah, but through his own doing, he's had opportunities to rebuild the reserves to a point, and just hasn't taken advantage of that.
And he's looked for a scrap at every opportunity. So the Spaniards go to the front.
The Germans, meanwhile, coming in for their portage.
The powerful is all on their own sim.
Still a slick takeout and a portage by the Germans, as they're holding on to a 7th place at the moment.
So the group's strung out, which means it's going quite fast. Spaniards put their paddles down, up takes Burkitt. McGregor might hold off on the V on the tail there rather than come up for now, because he's going to make the Norwegians do a lot of work to get back to Burkitt here, and he's very happy to do that.
Birken and Van der Westhuizen pulling really hard at the moment, I think, trying to put the pressure back onto Boros and Salty.
Do look like they're struggling. Salty, Boros going around the Norwegian side with the French. Spaniards have seen it, you're dead right. So the Spaniards take it on, and they're trying to put the hurt on the Norwegians here, really. Norway gradually beginning to look weaker and weaker. And Boros, oh my word, it's so hard. But again, they speed up, Boros and Salty. Spaniards looking round, they need a new leader. It's Burkitt again. McGregor just shifting from one V to the next, one to the next, one to the next. It's repeating the same process over and over, and each time he gains a little bit more. Just trying to duck round the back of the French. Come up behind the Spaniards.
I think it's up to Birken and Van der Westhuizen and the Spanish boat to do the work here, because I don't think there's anyone else willing to do the work to get rid of Boros and Salty as a threat there.
It was after this turn yesterday that we saw McGregor take the soft lead, and I think it worked so well for him yesterday. You see, I think, how he's feeling. If he's confident, I think he'll try the same again. Argentinians running ahead of Jacob Adam, Faria and Smith. So we've got Argentina, Portugal, Czech Republic and Great Britain. Charlie Smith, Magnus Gregory done a great job out there today of mixing with these guys.
Good put in from Jakob Adam and Jakob Zavrel.
18 and 19 respectively, Charlie Smith and Magnus Gregory.
Yeah, they've balked to the big dogs today. They can take a lot out of this.
Their first lap was exemplary, it really was. And through comes Boros.
So we're back with, there he comes.
It's not like we haven't seen this picture before.
Duke's up, here he comes. Andy Burkett and John van Westhuizen in the front. They're going to have to go round the Spaniards on their left.
So we got McGregor in the V. He can't get to the lead easily from there. So it's not going to be quite the same as yesterday.
What's also amazing is every time we've seen Boris attack, he's done it in the shallow water on the side and not in the deep water in the center.
You feel an attack on the Spaniards coming on any second now. They're just settling on their wash for now. So I can kind of see McGregor dipping out of the V just before the turn and trying to get round on the inside of the turn maybe, if his motivation is to lead out of the turn. You can't lead out the turn from the V, so you'd have to duck round the right of the Norwegians, just inside their tail maybe. So you're looking around now for him to start backing out of the V. Duck inside the Norwegians, but it's too late, I think, for that. Vold and Vold, not great round the turns generally, but McGregor has overlap on them, so he's stuck in the V for now. Salty Boros around the outside of the turn. Burkett. Now Burkett's going to be fairly awake to the possibility of McGregor taking the lead from this point on, I would say. So Burkett finds himself in the same position we saw McGregor yesterday. But McGregor comfortable.
Nobody really willing to roll up their sleeves at this stage. And it's still Burkett and Van Westhuizen doing the work at the front. All the conserving. And it must be said, the controlling of this group happening with McGregor and Mocker on the diamond. Things are going pretty much according to plan for McGregor and Mocker right now, and anybody that wants to challenge them at this stage is going to have to try and disrupt this plan. And it's a very different
last 2K now for McGregor. He's in the V. Yesterday he was leading. Simple plan. You don't let anyone past, and you do that as efficiently as possible. Now he has to wait for a window of opportunity somewhere to get into the front. The portage is the obvious opportunity, but that will be decided. A lot of that will be decided on the last turn. So he's got to rest, and he's got to conserve. And when he goes, Jasper has to be with him in an instant for it to stick. And Jasper's good at that. He's good for that.
Having seen a little frailty from the Volts as well, how much of a threat are they going to be if it comes down to the line? They were looking just short of gas.
I think you're going to see them maybe just about scrape through the last portage with the South Africans. They'll put up a challenge at some point and it'll be futile. You've got to overtake. You've seen Andy Burkett hold him off already, and McGregor isn't going to be slower than Burkett, so it's going to be really tough.
Long pull at the front for Andy Burkett and Jean van Westhuizen.
Yeah, Boros has got to do something as well from here, and that could shake things up. Because if Boros squeezes the Spanish back into the V, that forces McGregor to move earlier than he'd want to. I don't know. There's a lot going on right there right now.
And is there going to be any threat from Perez and Laurence when it comes down to that final 1,000?
We don't know. I think they're quite a new crew, so we'll see what they've got. But we saw them run really fast on the last portage. But yeah, just seeing Boris and Salty on that inside again, which means they're on the inside for that final turn to the left before the bottom turn, before the final portage, which is really shallow again. I think all my attention at the moment is pointing towards Jasper Mocker and what has he got in the tank. And we know Jasper, and we know what he brings to boat. We know his surf ski background. He knows what he brings to Hank. Hank is strong already. With Jasper in the back and fresh, he hasn't raced. He's going to bring a lot to that boat.
But it's Burkett.
I'm going to put in a bit of a negative to Jasper. I've seen him in stressful situations lose his cool a couple of times, and he really can't afford to do that if it comes to a bit of pushing and shoving on the portage. You know, even in the sort of video we've been watching at the entry to every session here, as they put in with the Hungarians, Jasper just nudges the boat into the Hungarians' bodies, and it's just that little bit of red mist that comes down with Jasper. I've seen him do it in a surf ski finish at the Worlds and doubles a couple of years back, and I've seen him do it here, and that's not what McGregor needs when it comes to it. But McGregor, for now, you know, it's just time. The longer he can stay there, the fresher he becomes. But there has to be a way out. Something's happening now. McGregor is trying to squeeze the Volts. That is, that's the wrong move. That is the wrong move. But now it's opened up the other side, and the Spaniards are going to have to hold McGregor off. And that is the first thing you've seen McGregor do wrong. Absolutely, that was the wrong thing to do. The Volts have protected that wash. With
and there goes Boros and Zolty.
And now McGregor's had his hand forced. He's going to have to, he'll come out on the French, no problem there.
McGregor's going around the outside now.
But the Volts are going to try and hold him off. And this is going to end up as a three-way sprint between the two South Africans and the Norwegians at some stage when McGregor wants to come round. And that's going to begin now.
McGregor
Here goes
off the wave. There
the Volts are going to match him.
The Volts are trying to shut him out.
Yeah.
McGregor
my word.
The Volts off.
Oh,
that was a very aggressive move. Hank McGregor, Jasper Mocker keeping their cool. The Volts have blown out of contention.
And job done for McGregor. Job done for McGregor. You saw that was naivety from the two Norwegians there. They didn't have to come out at that angle at all. They didn't have to have contact. They chose contact as their route. And if there's one person you don't choose to make contact with, it's Hank McGregor. And Hank and Jasper solid when the contact happened. Norwegian shaky, and job done.
Let's have another look at that.
Here we go.
Reckless and panic. Good catch in retrospect. They were swimming there.
It was a good catch, but it was the angle the Norwegians chose to come out at that was the problem there. They didn't have to do it.
It was a panic move.
Yeah, it was panic. And we've spoken about their unpredictability throughout, and now they're off the back of that group, and we won't see them take another part in this race from here on in.
And it is still Burkett and Van Westhuizen. They're going to tow this bunch all the way around to almost the bottom turn can.
This is Burkett's to lose, I think, at the moment.
Well, he's doing what McGregor did yesterday. He's got control of the front.
Yeah. But that also played to Boros, that move. Boros is a beneficiary of that. So you got the three main contenders that you'd have had from the start now in the three pole positions. Nervy moments.
Crikey, my heart's in my mouth.
And just naive from the Norwegians. You got to know when you make a move, not only what you expect to gain from that, but you've got to know the people you're making the move on. And you behave very differently making a move on McGregor than you would making a move on the Spaniards, say.
Well, they've slugged their way back into it on the outside.
Yes, it's no chance. No chance.
Burkett's just upping the ante as they come into the turn cans.
Burkett in total control at the moment, and it's going to come down to a foot race between Burkett and McGregor, I think, on the portage.
Boros is on the outside. They'll probably get into the portage more or less at the same time, but his frailty in the portage might be exposed.
So tense now. Burkett is the man in control. McGregor's got work to do. Boros finally has sorted this race out for himself.
Burkett takes it nice and wide going in. There's plenty of room for McGregor and Mocker to come around on the inside.
McGregor could have a little pop now.
Burkett looking really calm and composed.
Burkett is in control right now. Spaniards doing well here.
McGregor and Mocker
go Hank,
wide.
And this is it. This is to decide who wins, I think. Burkett goes.
Burkett responds beautifully
but Hank's
to
got
that.
It.
What a burst from Hank McGregor and Jasper Mocker. The two South Africans side by
Job
side.
Done. And there you go.
Very calm and composed looking Burkett. Doesn't want to get involved in a scrap at this stage of the game.
No, that was the scrap. That was the scrap. There's no, that was the winning move, I think, there. Unless something happens on the portage, but we got rid of all the unpredictability now. The Norwegians are gone, the French are gone. So that was a fantastic move from McGregor. He had to make it stick, and he did. So we're going to see, I think, another gold from McGregor.
McGregor and Mocker pulling into this final portage. Boris on the left-hand side, Burkett on the right-hand side. The Spanish on the diamond.
Boris well positioned, finally coming into a portage.
McGregor and Mocker.
In goes Burkett early, very early.
Good aggressive
McGregor's
move.
holding off. McGregor more interested in Boris than he is in Burkett.
Oh, a half
and that
slip
could
from
be a
McGregor.
mistake.
The two are side by side. Trying to close them out on the corner. They're right up against the railings.
Oh my word, this is fantastic.
Side by side. McGregor and Mocker, a fantastic run. They're actually shading Burkett and Van Vesthuizen on the run. It's going to give them half a boat length coming down to the put-in. This is it. They're going to put in side by side. South Africa, Hungary, McGregor, Mocker in first. Very good put-in by Burkett and Van Vesthuizen. Here they go.
Hungarians in trouble there. The Hungarians have missed their opportunity.
The Spaniards move into third.
The Hungarians missed an opportunity. They were very slow. They got in their boat well, but then didn't paddle away from the side. There was something wrong with Salty in the back there. But it was really interesting that McGregor had his eye purely on Boros coming into that. He let his eye off Burkett for a second and nearly paid a price.
A brilliant run by the Hungarians, though. That was definitely their best run of the race. Can you believe it? We've got 5 boats after the final portage.
All together.
And
it's the French, isn't it, I think, are still there after all the beating they've taken.
The pace has slowed right down. McGregor controlling the pace at the front, waiting for the attacks, but any attack that happens from now on, he's got half a boat length lead already.
McGregor's sorted, really, unless, bar an accident, it's going to be so hard for anyone to come past him. But, if there had been another quarter of a length lead for Burkett on the first bit of the portage, they'd have closed McGregor out from the inside lane on the portage, and it would have been a very different story right now.
Ominous feeling for the other 4 boats here.
Almost a mistake from McGregor there to be playing with Boros when he should have been looking at Burkett. But it's a simple process now. If anyone comes past McGregor now, it's just because he's simply not fast enough, and we've seen no evidence of that.
Just picking up the pace slightly. Gloomy times for the other 4. This is McGregor in control. My game, my rules.
Gloomy times for the Hungarians, I think, because they had it sorted. They had third sorted, but somehow Salty couldn't get his paddles going after the portage. But they're in the V for 1,000 metres, and they've got a turn of speed as well. So
any mistake from anyone on that turn, and Boris is going to be straight through that gap on the inside. So this is the perfect turn. They're in trouble, but if something goes wrong.
Into the turn they come. McGregor, Mocker in the front. On their right.
It's a tight turn. No one's coming around the inside.
Everybody's through clean.
Boris in the real trouble here because he's going to be forced out very, very wide from this point on.
McGregor, Mocker come out at pace.
Boris's race is over. McGregor, it's going to be McGregor versus Burkett, just as it was yesterday.
With the Spaniards on the outside.
Don't think Burkett's got it.
Here come the
French
Frenchmen.
coming on the right.
Posturing on the outside. I really don't think it's going to count for much.
The French look unbelievably strong for a crew that's had their position dictated to them, and the Norwegians are having a little pop in the back there from 5 lengths behind.
So it's Henk McGregor and Jasper Mocker.
Now the Norwegians could provide a little bit of a complication for McGregor here if they get up to being in contention at all. It'll give him 2 decisions to make, and he only needs to make 1 at a time at this stage. But looking up the course, the Norwegians are too far back now to have an impact. The French moving wide. They look tidy, the French.
Adrian Boris and Laszlo Zolty just sitting on the way, but they do look something of a spent force.
Boris and Salty have to wait for the Spaniards to pull back on McGregor's wave when it kicks off. And they have to burst through just like he did yesterday in the K1.
Now Burkett has raced McGregor here and has mulled over the mistakes he made at the timing of pulling the trigger. If he
There's
wants to
nothing
take,
he can do. There's nothing. Burkett. Here you go, Boros. Boros kicks it off.
McGregor responds. It's McGregor gone. Boros is trying to come off the wave. Burkett and Van der Westhuizen are going with him. Boros is taking.
Boros has to go uphill on Burkett.
Boros
Boros is going to get there. It's Boros versus McGregor.
McGregor by half a boat length. Boros is laying it all down on the water, but Hank McGregor is coming home to claim his third K2 title with Jasper
McGregor
Mocker.
supreme.
Oh, and there's a silver to South Africa on the line. I venture to suggest. Really sticking my neck out here, but I think Boros threw the brakes out too early.
Eesh. Boros had silver and he relaxed towards the line. I'd love to see that finish again.
Holy Kamali, timekeeper's video,
silver
please.
was in Boros's pocket, no doubt about it. He'd broken Burkett, and I don't know. Well, let's see that. Let's have a replay, guys.
What an amazing finish there. Started off with the French hitting it hard on the right-hand side of the bridge pillar, opening the gap for Boros. He came round, attacked very, very hard. McGregor and Mocker responded, took it out all the way through to the finish. And interesting to see what's happened with second position. We're going to have to see that replay to see who's taken the second. But it should have been Boros and Salty, but we're going to have a look and see the replay.
Yeah, and what's going to make it doubly agonizing is that our camera view isn't going to give us that absolute perpendicular look down the finish line to be able to make that call.
Either way, we need to see the finish again because it was so exciting. You have to be impressed by Boros and Salty after all the punishment they took to even be a contender for that sprint finish.
Handshakes, here we go.
At this stage, Boros and Salty way clear. They're rolling down the wave of McGregor, but they've stopped. Which is the line? Is it the orange or yellow? If it's yellow,
it's the orange boys.
Then I think it's South Africa too.
It's going to be a 5mm silver for South
Boros
Africa.
and
If our view
Salty
is right.
will regret the day they put their hand in the air for that one. Yeah,
Adrian Boros is going to battle to stomach that if that is what has happened.
Well, I'm just going to turn to the crowd. Who got it, guys?
The completely biased crowd here is giving us, well, what we are definitely going to have to do.
No one knows. They're all as in the dark as I am back here.
I'm going to ask somebody just to ask the timekeepers.
We need to see it again.
The timekeeper's video is going to be the absolute deciding factor. It's all scored on a time pad with a millisecond by millisecond breakdown. They will be the only definitive answer about who is in second.
Anything's a bonus for Burkett. They were coming from behind. The silver medal was in the pocket of the Hungarians. These boys did well today.
Yeah.
Vold and Vold. Superb effort on their part. Round the top turn.
Jakub and Jakub.
The Argentinians, Czechs, Portuguese. And in the background, the Brits.
The steely control of Hank McGregor.
Just so impressive. We'll just let the applause die down.
That's 18-year-old John van Westhuizen who's just getting onto the podium in the senior K2 after having been a 16-year-old as a junior.
Yeah, McGregor has shown that he can do it from wherever he is in the group. Yesterday, he did what Burkett tried today, and today he came from the V. He'd rested. It was down to one hard sprint, and he got Burkett before the portage, and then it was all over.
So I'd love to get some final confirmation from the timekeepers if they can hear us at all. But there's your champions for 2017. It's going to take Hank into double figures. That's his 10th world title. But that was a proper slugfest. Andy Burkett and Jean van der Westhuizen. Craig Mustard, their coach, beaming like a Cheshire cat, as he would rightly be entitled to.
Silver for Hungary has just been announced.
Silver for Hungary.
So it looks like it was a little too late for the South Africans to pull up into silver medal, but if you're going to make a measurement there, it must have been the smallest of measurements.
But just going back to that race, Adrian Boros and Salty, what a race. They were at one stage, they were a minute behind. They clawed their way back. They kept attacking. And to finish off with a silver medal, an amazing performance from them.
Yeah, probably would have had a silver medal if they'd been in the front group the whole way round, you know. So they're just making a bit more entertainment for the crowd. So Adam and Zavril just holding off Vergoven and Rodriguez from Argentina. Faria and Rodriguez from Portugal are next over the line, followed by the Brits, Charlie Smith and Magnus Gregory. Charlie, who got a silver medal in the junior race way back now, seems like weeks ago on Thursday. Great job from all these crews. They've entertained us all. There's Salty and Boris.
Forearm seizing on Laszlo Zolti. They've had to work really hard. Burnt a lot of their matches catching up onto that top group.
Well done to Charlie Smith and Magnus Gregory. If nothing else, that first lap for them was an absolute revelation. Superb, boys.
We've seen amazing performances from the top 3 crews, but let's not forget the 4th crew. They fought so valiantly. The Spanish crew from Riva de Sella under Kiko Vega, they had an amazing race from start to finish, really performed well, and although they got 4th, they raced a solid race here today.
Absolutely, and in the light of the rest of the Spanish capitulation this weekend, that's a great result from them.
Hank McGregor and Jasper Mocker now paddling in front of this packed stand here at Camps Drift, celebrating their 3rd K2 World title. And this is the wonderful moment where it all starts sinking in. The heart rate starts returning out of the high triple figures to something slightly more normal, and your brain can start digesting what you've just done, what you've just achieved. Massive moment for Hank, of course, because his son is watching it. I know that means chunks to him.
I must say we can just catch a bit of a glimpse of that blood on the forehead of Hank McGregor there. So that little clash early on in the race didn't do him any damage. And yeah, amazing 2 days of racing from Hank McGregor. Jasper Mocker coming in the boat today, jumping in the back, and providing all the power they needed to take that gold medal again today.
Superb racing we've been treated to this weekend. It's hard. I mean, there's 3 of us here. We've been sat here all weekend, and if I asked anyone to pick a highlight, I think it would be a really tough call. I don't think you could. It would come down to personal involvement with the athlete, I think, before you could choose a highlight, because the performances have been superb, such a high level all weekend.